This is Brian, ScreenFiles.com and Review. You probably aren't aware of the name of Alex Garland, but he's behind a lot of the movies that you would likely enjoy. The Island, 28 Days Later, Dread, Sunshine, and he's directed two, which are Ex Machina and Annihilation, which I'm going to talk about today. Annihilation was a movie released by Paramount Pictures, and they had so little faith in this movie that they sold if I recall, the domestic rights to Netflix or some other venue and released it as a Paramount movie internationally. It didn't do very well. It earned just over $30 million on a $40 million budget, which by no metric is a success. And having just seen Annihilation, I understand that. It's a beautiful, brilliant, thought-provoking movie that is really hard to pin down. That they made this movie at all is a minor miracle, frankly. It's remarkable. But it's hard to put it into a blurb or a sentence. It's hard to understand, without seeing it, what this movie's about. And if I were to describe it, I would call it a cross between Denis Villeneuve's Arrival and John Carpenter's The Thing. That's a pretty unholy combination there, but I think it perfectly fits this movie. It's beautiful, there's a tranquility, there's a softness to it, while at the same time there's a remarkable brutality, not a mean-spiritedness, by the way. It is violent, quite violent at times, but it's not mean-spirited violence. And in fact, some of the violence is almost beautiful. It's a fascinating movie, but as I said, it's hard to pigeonhole, it's hard to describe. A movie from a major distributor like this, from Paramount, would more likely not succeed, because how do you even describe this? It's not an easy movie. It doesn't tell you how to think. A big pet peeve of mine are movies that overtly, or through music or other cues, try to tell you how to think. Annihilation doesn't do that. There's very little music, and in fact most of the music I would call ambient, in which it's not overly dramatic or overly anything. It's just there to emphasize certain action beats or certain moods, but it's not blatantly obvious. It's not John Williams, in other words. And I like John Williams' music, but John Williams' music oftentimes is manipulative. Luckily, usually, I should say, when it's employed, the action follows the music, so it doesn't feel out of place. But it's blatantly manipulative at times. The music for Ex Machina isn't. As I said, it's almost ambient. You barely notice it half the time. So, Annihilation would not succeed. I would not expect this to succeed. After all, this movie is the most Lovecraftian movie I've ever seen. And that word gets thrown out, even I would argue, than some Lovecraft-based movies. This is what Lovecraft is talking about. It's the unknown. It's about things from space which don't care about us in particular. They just do what they do. And to them, we are insignificant. And some of these themes echo throughout Annihilation. It's just remarkable. I didn't catch this in theaters either, frankly, because I didn't get the advertisement. It just felt odd to me. And having seen it finally, I get that. The thing about it being a primary female cast, though, it doesn't pander to women. It doesn't pander to men, for that matter. It just has 4 or 5 women as leads, and it works. This is not the reboot of Ghostbusters. This is not, at least to me, it didn't feel like it was trying to prove anything. It just had 5 women as leads. Okay, fine. If you want to do that, do that. I have no issue with that. And it was done so brilliantly here. It wasn't trying to sell you an agenda or make any kind of point about empowerment. It was just 5 women in the lead. Fine. They did excellent. It reminds me, in that respect, it reminds me of The Descent, which also had 4 or 5 women in the lead. That movie also didn't pander. It didn't seem, at least to me, both movies, The Descent and Annihilation, directed by men, it's worth mentioning, and neither movie pandered to the audience. I couldn't see an agenda. They were just really good movies with female leads. Fine, go for it. Don't take a property that is controversial, or, well, I wouldn't have thought it would be controversial, but as controversial as Ghostbusters. Do what The Descent did, do what Annihilation does. Just make a movie. If you want female leads, put female leads in it. This movie did really great with it. It's a tour de force. It is incredible. If you have not checked it out, please do. It deserves a huge cult following.